Hi, and welcome to the Tech Guy's Midnight Court. I am your host, Pete, the Tech Guy. Half Fedora will travel, although I'm not traveling farther than my room tonight for this podcast. Great to spend some time with you. Always great on for the Friday morning podcast because the last day of my work is Thursday night. I get home from work and it's my weekend, so I'm always in a better mood when I'm doing this first podcast as opposed to the second podcast, which is the end of my first day of my work week, which is a little bit harder, but I got a lot in my mind. So it's great to have you. Want to remind you, if you're just discovering this podcast or if a friend is sending it to you, that you can, if you like what you hear, you can find me at DaTechGuyblog.com. That's DaTechGuy blog.com, where I and my magnificent 7 writers provide content every single day talking about all kinds of topics from baseball to politics to almost anything else. You can also find me on WQPH Radio. That's 89.3 FM, Shirley, Fitchburg, every Saturday at noon. I host Your Prayer Intentions, which is our Catholic radio show on the EWTN station. And if you like what you see, you can also grab my book. It's called Hail Mary, the Perfect Protestant and Catholic Prayer. It's available at Amazon. Love to have you buy it. And $1 of every purchase goes to the radio station, too, so it helps out there. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about 3 different topics. First topic I want to talk about is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we did a show on conventional wisdom. And the thing about conventional wisdom is that it's always right up until the moment it isn't. Right up until the very moment it isn't. And when it was announced that Bernie Sanders was going to was going to give a speech, everyone was all, well, Bernie's about to pull out of the race. Bernie Sanders is about to leave the presidential race. Well, it was he tried hard and blah, 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 blah. And that was what everybody was talking about, that Bernie Sanders was done and now he was going to concede now, and that was going to be it. Well, turned out it wasn't the case at all. Turned out that Bernie Sanders decided to do something very un-Bernie Sanders-like. He decided to fight. Yes, he did. Bernie Sanders decided to fight. Hold on one second. Sorry, I've only got 2 hands here, and I got to try and I haven't quite reached the point where I can hold the mic and type. I really should I actually have a mic stand sitting over there, but since I'm sitting on a bed, you can't really set up the mic stand on the bed unless I go a little closer to the edge. But we'll work about, again, this is a brand new podcast to do at the end of the day. Eventually, I'll probably do things more conventional. I'll have the mic stand, have everything else and so forth. But who cares? We're here to talk. It doesn't matter how fancy things are. Well, Bernie Sanders decided he was going to fight. He was going to challenge Joe Biden. And this was a great surprise and a huge disappointment for many people on the Democrat establishment who was sure that Bernie was done and was getting ready to go and was going to go and do as they thought was the right thing. Now, there's several reasons why this is not a surprise. Reason number 1, it was just 2 weeks ago that Bernie Sanders was considered the front runner. And things changed very rapidly. So there's no reason why they might not change rapidly again. Reason number 2, Bernie Sanders basically is running an insurgency. And he makes a good living off this insurgency. Remember, his campaign gets a lot of small donations. And if he's hiring friends or relatives or anything like that, they get a fair amount of that money is paid for if they put up ads, there's commissions and so forth. So you can make some good money on a campaign. So the longer you keep the campaign up and the longer you got that money coming in, the more money you're making. And Bernie Sanders, for all his talk about socialism, when it comes to making money off of socialism, he is the quintessential capitalist. But the real thing is, he knows he's not going to get anything from these guys. He knows that if he decides that, he just had a heart attack, in 4 years he's going to be near 80. He ain't going to get, this is it. I mean, there's an outside chance he might be able to try it later, but this is pretty much it for him if he wants to be president. So if he wants to go for the brass ring, he's got to go for it now. And finally, he's seen Joe Biden up close. And he knows that if there's one thing he's sure about, Joe Biden ain't up for it. Now, maybe Joe Biden feels a little bit better when he, gets the juices flowing when he's in a debate. Maybe he manages to do a little better. But one-on-one against Bernie Sanders, not even Tulsi Gabbard there to hit Bernie back a little bit, it's going to be bad for Biden. And yeah, there won't be a crowd there, so because of the coronavirus stuff, that when they debate, there's just going to be them and the cameras and so forth. So there's not going to be a Biden crowd to boo Bernie and so forth. So Biden's going to be there and have to sit, because they're going to make him sit down. Anything to keep him going. He's going to have to basically stand on his own 2 feet sitting down. And there's some real questions whether Joe Biden can do that. There are some serious questions of whether or not Joe Biden is capable of doing that. So if Joe Biden ain't capable of doing it, folks, and I got to tell you, it's not going to be a fun time for these guys. If they can't, Bernie's got his best chance, his absolutely best chance to make things happen. And he's going for the gold. And you can't, like I say, you can't say as I blame him. He's got every right to do this. And a lot of the Democrats, he needs to pull out. He needs to pull out. The only smart person, and this is almost an oxymoron to say, the only smart person in this, the only one who's showing any sense, is Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi made it a point, and notice how she did this. She made it a point to volunteer at a press day. Oh, by the way, I think Bernie should stay in the race. Nobody was asking her that, but she volunteered it. Now, why did she volunteer it? Why did she volunteer? Yes, Bernie should be able to stay in the race if he wants to. Well, it's very simple. Nancy Pelosi knows that to have any chance of winning the presidency, and for her best chance to keep the House, she needs the Bernie bros to show up. Now, you've already got the Bernie bros upset at the attempt to fix this election for Biden. And they're just upset as all can be. You cannot believe how upset these people are. Well, how can you upset them more? By forcing Bernie out before the convention. Well, I'm telling you, right now the math favors Biden. And even if he doesn't get more than a plurality going into the convention, if he has the lead, then the superdelegates have every excuse to go for him on the second ballot. And they will. I mean, actually, a very long time ago, I predicted Joe Biden second ballot. And I suggested that the reason why there were so many people who were pushing for this, were running, was to make sure that Bernie didn't get enough votes so Biden could get it on the second ballot. Well, Nancy knows that the odds are for Biden. So it's much smarter to let Bernie win some of his primaries, to let him have his say, to let him do his stuff. Because even if they have to replace Biden on the ticket, and a lot of people are saying that this is a possibility, that this might actually be the plan, is to erase Biden, get Biden off the ticket. And some people are saying they're going to put Hillary. They are not going to put Hillary on there. They know that Hillary would lose worse than Biden, and Biden's not compos mentis. I mean, let's be blunt about that. Biden has a better chance than Hillary. But you don't upset these people unnecessarily. And now this was a mistake that Mitt Romney made, by the way, in 2012, when he tried to use various tricks to lock out Rand Paul. Now, Rand Paul wasn't going anywhere in 2012, but enough of Rand Paul's people were pissed off at Mitt that it made a difference come election time. And this didn't have to be. Remember, there's a difference between a primary and a general election. In a general election, you want to crush the other guy because that makes a difference for your party all up and down the ballot. But a primary, you're going to need those guys come a general election. And Pelosi has figured this out. Pelosi realizes this because she's still enough old school to realize this. This is why a lot of times she'll give. I mean, people don't understand why she gives these people a time of day half the time. But that's really what she's doing. It's an old fashioned way of doing things, and it's a smart way of doing things. And you hate to give Nancy Pelosi credit, but this is politics 101. You do not chase away votes you're going to need. And Pelosi is doing her best to not chase these votes away. So that's what's going on with Bernie. I hope he can land some blows on Biden, because although now, and this is where I'm a little bit torn. If I had a choice between Bernie and Biden as president, I would clearly choose Biden, because Bernie is a full-fledged communist. Biden pushes a lot of socialist shit, but he's not a full-fledged communist. Bernie's an actual communist. No matter how he puts it, he's an actual communist, and he's just not good, in my opinion. Anyone who honeymoons in the Soviet Union during the Cold War is, to me, as I've said this before on this show, is no different from someone who would honeymoon in Berlin in 1938. I mean, Bernie, and he's unrepentant on this stuff. Bernie's bad. Now, on the other hand, I would prefer Bernie as a candidate for two reasons. First, I think that we would beat him much better than we will beat Biden. But secondly, I think it's important to defeat socialism, and I think it's important for us to have this confrontation now, because right now, and I think socialism has the disadvantage at the polls. You want to have if you're going to have a fight, you want to have the fight when you have the advantage. Right now, we have the advantage over the socialists in an election. This is when we have to bury them. This is where we bury them. And if Bernie's the nominee, we can bury socialism. And since the Democrats will endorse, I mean, you're not going to see anyone but Bernie. You're not going to see a never Bernie thing in the Democrats, because the Democrats don't ride that. And Bernie has enough friends in the radical Islam department, and radical Islam is the future of the Democrat Party. I mean, it just is. I've written a series of pieces on this, and not just radical Islam, but Islam in general, called The Ghastly Tom Hayden Math, which is why you're going to see groups that Islam doesn't like start to be dropped from Biden, which is why the Jews are getting dropped. The liberal Jews are finding out that they got nothing for the Democrats, because there's just not enough of them. And the math is with Islam in America, because they're growing and the other groups are not. So that's where it's going to be. So you're going to see an awful lot of people that the left love right now suddenly becoming very, very, very conservative. They are jumping over to the Republican side simply because Islam's going to chase them out. But anyway, so Bernie's not going anywhere in that sense. But I'd like to get that nipped in the bud. But anyways, Bernie's decided to go all in. It's going to be worthwhile to see this debate. It's going to be worthwhile to see this debate. Oh, by the way, Hot Air reports that Elizabeth Warren is not going to endorse Sanders or Biden. That's not going to win her a lot of friends among the Bernie bros. But then again, she's probably not running for president again. I mean, when you come in third in Massachusetts, when you're Elizabeth Warren coming in third in Massachusetts, you just don't have the moxie to go for that. So that's what's going on there. I don't know if I'm going to have time to watch the debate this weekend. I hope I get a chance to. But I'll watch it later, even if I just watch it taped. But it will be interesting. That's topic one. Okay, topic two, and I keep alluding to this every week, but I don't give it the full time that I want to, is Doctor Who and the destruction of Doctor Who. Now, if you were following my radio show back when the Tech Guy on the Radio was actually on the radio on WCRN or syndicated, or you've been reading the blog for a long time, you know that I was a big Doctor Who fan. In fact, my Doctor Who scarf's around here somewhere. I normally would be wearing this one. Hold on. This is my season 18 scarf. My son's ordered it for me. It's all the way from Scotland. It's a very special scarf, and I still wear it on occasion because, of course, a Doctor Who scarf is a trademark, but also my son sent all the way to Scotland for this. And it's a beautiful scarf. It's a bit beat up because I've worn it a lot. Let me put this on. It's from the final season of Tom Baker. Tom Baker, of course, the Doctor who wore the scarf. It's a great scarf, and I love it, and I love my sons for getting it for me. And the other two, in fact, the other two Doctor Who scarves I have, the one I wore when I was the one I wore when I questioned Donald Trump at two press conferences during the last election was also came from England. It was from the people at Granite Rock, Mike and Mama. And the third one I got from my friends at Ann's Book Swap back in Worcester, where I used to buy the Doctor Who CDs. Well, this is the death of Doctor Who that's going on right now is actually in a way a repeat. Doctor Who was launched the year I was born. It premiered the day Kennedy was shot. I was like 6 months old. And it ran till the late 1980s. And the reason why it was canceled was because they decided they were going to be woke. They didn't like Margaret Thatcher. And so they started writing anti-Thatcher scripts. And a lot of the stuff became anti-Thatcher, and the people were talking about it and interviewed about it. But because of that, they just turned off the viewers. And after 26 years, the show died. Now, the show was able to go on for this long because the original Doctor, a fellow by the name of William Hartnell, was old when he was cast, and he was getting sick. And they had an original idea. They decided, since the Doctor's an alien, his body's going to just regenerate, change his face, change his appearance. And they cast a different actor, Patrick Troughton, different personality, the whole 10 yards. And it was a brilliant idea. And because of that, the show basically gets to reinvent itself every few years. And they went through so many Doctors and so forth. And when they got to the 13th, when they brought the show back, when it was brought back by some people who were pretty woke. Russell P. Davies, he was very woke. He was a very famous gay writer. But he was a great Doctor Who fan, a great Doctor Who writer. I think he used to write for Queer as Folk was the show. And he would be sneaking in. And when he brought it back to the show, he would be sneaking in woke stuff, pushing in a little bit of the gay agenda here, a little bit of the gay agenda there. But us Doctor Who fans, first time we didn't care because we were just so happy to get the show back. And then David Tennant came on, and he kept pushing a little more, but we didn't care because David Tennant was brilliant as the Doctor. Then Stephen Moffat came on, and he started pushing a little more, and he had Matt Smith as the Doctor. And Matt Smith, in my opinion, and this is a very hard thing for me to say, it's very difficult for me to pick between Matt Smith and Tom Baker, because I think Matt Smith was brilliant as the Doctor. There are days, when people say Doctor Who, I would always think Tom Baker in my head, but there are days when I would think Matt Smith. And there are a lot of people who disagree with me. A lot of people like David Tennant better, but I think Matt Smith was better. I think the insanity that he brought to he brought both seriousness and insanity to the role. And it was just delightful. And then came Peter Capaldi, which was a big change because he was an older Doctor, because they started to bring some romance into the show. And Capaldi, you didn't really have that romance vibe, so I think it turned off some viewers. But Capaldi was such a good actor. And some of the scripts, there was one script, and again, the wokeness kept increasing. They finally gave him a lesbian companion in his final season. And there was this scene in one episode where the lesbian companion is on a date, and you can hear the TARDIS materializing his spaceship. And she's like kind of talking to this girl. So, well, whatever is happening over there. And who walks in but the Pope? Because the Pope had come for the Doctor's help, and he landed the ship in her apartment without asking. And over there, Dad! And he walks in talking Italian, walks back into the bedroom. And the gate's over there. That was the Pope. I'm sorry. It was still, to me, it is still one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. There was also one of my favorite episodes of the whole revised series called The Husbands of River Song, who was a great character introduced by Stephen Moffat. And her and Peter Capaldi, it was a wonderful episode and a bit of a love story. And I'm going to tell you something about myself. I am a sucker for a love story. I am a sucker for sentiment. And it was a sad and beautiful story. And I would have to say although Peter Capaldi is not the best Doctor of the new run, that was probably my favorite episode of the new run, because I tear up just thinking about it now, because I really cared about the character at the time. And it was a special thing. And Capaldi was very good. They changed the gender of the master, which was very, very woke. But Michelle Gomez, who played the character, she's now Lilith in the Strange Adventures of Sabrina, kind of a dark version of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, was so good. I mean, she was. Some actors are just. She was just. She was so good that you couldn't complain about it. I mean, there were some people. Her master was like Roger Delgado, the original master, with a little more comedy, and just I cannot say, I cannot express how good Michelle Gomez's character was as the master. It was just beyond any. It was just spectacular, and she and Capaldi played off each other wonderful. It was you can't. It was wonderful. It was just great. And I remember watching the third to last show with Capaldi, and I'm thinking, boy, this is going to be great. And then came the next episode, which was very woke, and it was really disappointing. And then came the final episode, which was a multi-doctor episode. The first doctor meets the first doctor, and he kept complaining about him because the first doctor wasn't woke, as if an alien is going to be woke by human standards. And then the BBC decided they were going to make the show woke. They decided they wanted a woman doctor, and Chris Chibnall decided they were going to, and basically the show became all about not about the science fiction anymore, but about being woke. Now, if they had done something interesting, like made Michelle Gomez the doctor, because the master seemingly gets killed there, and had him regenerate into Michelle Gomez, and had her play the doctor that way, I bet you Gomez could have pulled it off. But everything was written to be woke. And I wrote at the time, before this happened, that you can't really make the doctor woman. First of all, that implies that you cannot write a strong woman character. And there are plenty of woman time lords. You don't need to make the doctor woman. Second of all, there are certain problems when you're time traveling, because in the past, the way women were treated, the doctor was not going to be accepted. And third, you have the issue of rape, for example. The doctor's constantly being captured, constantly being chained. That would have to come up sooner or later. So I gave all these reasons. I remember I was driving with my son. We were going someplace. I forget where we were going. And I was driving. He announced that Jodie Whittaker was going to be the doctor, because they would announce it while we were there. And it was literally like a switch turned on. I mean, now I had been a Doctor Who fan since I was 13. I caught it on Providence TV. And it's like a switch turned off. I had literally cared about that character for 40 years. Didn't care anymore. Stopped listening to it, stopped buying the Big Finish, didn't bother with it anymore. And I asked my readers if they wanted me to follow the show. And nobody said they wanted to have me review, because I'd been reviewing episodes right along. And so I decided I wasn't going to even bother to watch it. But my son decided to watch it. So my son was telling me about the episodes. And unfortunately, everything I was telling you about the show, it was worse. It was only about being woke. It was terrible. It was, I mean, everything he was telling me about, it was horrible. And then the second season came. It was it was sort of like Barack Obama, in the sense that Barack Obama was a failure as a president in his first term. But the American left could not let the first black president be a failure. So likewise, they could not let the first woman doctor be a failure. So they had a second season. And the second season was even more woke. And they threw away the Christmas special, because, of course, Christmas is patriarchal and so forth. So no more Christmas specials anymore. And they claimed that, they couldn't come up with any more. Seriously, you're supposed to be the writer of one of the most popular shows in the history of British television. You can't come up with something? You're supposed to be the showrunners? Are you seriously making that excuse? And the viewership went down. The ratings went down. There was crashing and burning. The very first episode had some attention, because, everyone wanted to see it. But what was going to happen? But it just kept going down and down, and they kept doubling down on everything. So it was getting worse. People were, and it was the Rotten Tomato. Now the critics loved it because it was so woke. The critic score was great, but the audience results were getting so bad that Rotten Tomatoes would erase the audience score to try and reset it, and then it would show up bad again. It kept happening. Well, this week, the finale for Doctor Who, what they finally did was, and people were hinting at this, they decided to change the whole canon because there were so many doctors, and this was the 13th Doctor. Now saying no, the Doctor was originally a woman, and we're rewriting all of these things that people were very invested in. The whole Big Finish audio adventures were all based on these things. Throw it all away. Again, because it was more woke, it was more important to be woke than the fans. And the BBC has had a deluge of complaints. And there were a lot of people who'd been defending the Jodie Whittaker show, even though I mean, it was so bad. And they hinted at this a few weeks ago where they introduced a black female doctor to go along with this doctor, implying that, there was another doctor there. And I remember my son was telling me about that. It was really, he said, this was the worst thing in the world for Jodie Whittaker because this other woman was very believable as the doctor. This woman was like the doctor. This woman was written like the doctor. So it's bad enough to be the first woman doctor. It's bad, but it's worse when you're not good enough. But it's just so funny to see this happen. I mean, it's sad to me because this was something I loved and cared about. But the BBC doesn't care because the BBC is a monopoly. British taxpayers pay for the BBC. They pay a license to have their TV set. Now, forget the fact that there's all different other channels, all different choices. They get this money automatically. So they have no incentive to change. So they're going to double down. There's supposedly going to be a third season. And they thought they were strong because HBO was supposedly buying the backlog and so forth. But now HBO, I don't know what they're thinking there. But again, they decided they're going to keep pushing it. Now, there's one thing that keeps me from completely panicking, and that's the New Hot finale. I remember the New Hot finale. You might recall, if you're old of an age, the Bob Newhart show, the second Bob Newhart show, where he's running this hotel in Vermont. And in the last episode, he gets hit by a golf ball, passes out, and he wakes up in a bed with Suzanne Pleshette. And Suzanne Pleshette turns out, it's his wife from the Bob Newhart show, and the whole series is a dream. But, it's very funny. It's very, very, very funny. And I got to tell you, watching this happen, and again, we saw this happen before. But you got to remember something else concerning this. This is what the left does. The left destroys, either trying to convert institutions, and if they can't keep them, or destroy them. Like think the Boy Scouts. The left did not like the Boy Scouts, wanted them dead. They made them woke and they died. Now, they might have liked to keep them woke, but them being dead is just as good. Anything that can, and Doctor Who, for all of its wokeness, an inspiring show about morality, about bravery, about manly qualities that young boys could look up to. Not anymore. And people like me, I mean, I cannot tell you how many people I recommended the show to over the years, and recommended the Big Finish thing. My sons were into Doctor Who, all of us, and we pushed it. There's literally I spent 2 generations talking up this show, and then I suddenly stopped. And how many other people are doing the same? And again, this was a British institution, but it was more important to be woke. But this is what the left does. This is socialism. And I'm anxious for the show to die so that it can be revived again. And I'm hoping that when it's revived, they New Hart it or Dallas it, where it's all a dream, or it's all an alternate universe, or they can always use. There was a sort of like Pasty Men during the Matt Smith time, where they were making the Almost People. There was kind of an almost doctor that was made of goop. They could always make Jodie Whittaker's doctor be this goop doctor, which would be very appropriate because her span as the doctor has been slimy and unfulfilling. And she's not a bad actress. I mean, that's the real surprising. But she also talked about trying to make it woke because she wanted to be a good feminist and so forth. So, let them be hoisting their own petard, and she'll never live this down. I mean, it'll never. She'll be proud about it, but she'll never live it down. But again, this is what happens with the left. This is what it does. I'm always a little upset about it because they took something I loved away from me here. But it's a TV show. And actually, what's really funny is when I think about it, they might have done me a favor because I was like a Star Wars fan. You know how fans become fanatical. It was Chris Chibnall's horrible writing and Jodie Whittaker's horrible performances. And again, I take it from my sons because I didn't bother to watch because I wanted to remember the Doctor as it was. That reminded me that this was a TV show and not something important. So maybe I should give them a thank you for making sure I knew what mattered in life. All right, and that's topic number 2. Now the topic number 3, coronavirus. Several things I want to talk about here. First of all, at my own work, we had a meeting about the coronavirus today. And they basically told us, we're going to clean up. We're going to, at the start of the day, we're going to clean all the stations. If anybody show signs of a cold, they're going to go home. And if there's a sign of this going on, if you're a sign of being sick, don't show up. And this is common sense. And one of the things, the panic that's been going on, I've talked about this panic in the past. This is common sense. I mean, I know that this is a pandemic, and I know a lot of people are dying from it, and I know all of this stuff, but it's still the flu. It's still a version of the flu. And when it comes down to it, if you wash your hands, if you don't do stupid things, don't go to large gatherings, wash your hands. If you're sick a little bit, stay away from people. These are basic common sense things. Now, the president's done a pretty good job with this. And again, his early moves with China and other places are paying off now. He's done his best to keep panic from going on. And I see that the NBA, the NHL, and now Major League Baseball are suspending or postponing games. And I know my son is probably devastated because he was going to go see Letterkenny live in Boston this weekend, and that's going to end up canceled. But, if you're going to do stuff like that, if you're going to do the not being around things, better to do it early. Do it early, see what effect it has, because the real problem isn't so much that the virus can't be treated or that they won't develop a vaccine in time, because I suspect they'll develop one fairly quickly. The real thing is you got to make sure that the people getting infected don't happen all at once. Because if it grows gradually, then the healthcare system can manage it. But if it comes suddenly, then like what's happened in Italy, it gets overwhelmed. So the idea is you need to slow it down long enough to first get the vaccine, and secondly, to make sure that you can handle it. And Trump's done a decent job here. And one of the things, and I debating whether or not to bring it up now. I think I'm going to wait till Monday. But there's conventional wisdom concerning the coronavirus that a lot of people have been saying. And I've been watching what's been happening, what's been actually happening, and how people have been reacting to what's been happening. And I'm coming to the conclusion that the conventional wisdom is wrong. I don't want to say yet what I think. I want to see. I want to watch. I'm going to wait. We'll wait till Monday for that. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 3 days. We'll wait 3 days. I want to see how people continue to react and what people continue to do. To see if I have a hypothesis in my head concerning this. If I'm right, or if I think I'm right, because I won't know I'm right for a while, we'll talk about it on Monday's show, and I will make my case for it. But the main thing right now remains to be, don't panic. Don't panic. Wash your hands. Don't do stupid things. And again, this is a great example of faith in terms of religion. For example, there's a prayer. In fact, on WQPH, we're having a little event on Saturday at the Old Timers Restaurant in Clinton. We're giving out kits which have exorcised water, which is water that's not just been blessed, but exorcised. An exorcism has been performed on it, and salt and so forth. There's also a special prayer from a blessed saint, not a saint, a blessed, a beatified person to prevent plague and so forth. And there's a difference between asking God for help and having faith in that and in putting God to the test. You'll remember when Christ was tempted in the garden, you shall not, he says, throw yourself down, because it'll hold you up. And Jesus says back to him, it is also written, you shall not put the Lord God to your test. A great example of this is that idiot on the Utah Jazz who goes around touching microphones and stuff and saying, well, this is all overblown. Well, you can make the case that a lot of this was overblown. You can make the case that some of this was not done right. But you don't do stupid things. You don't say, I have faith that God will save me, and then jump off of a cliff. That's putting God to the test. That's stupid. You don't put yourself in a bad situation with this coronavirus. And this is common sense. And this is things that people knew. People knew this instinctively. But this is something that, and this, I've talked about this on the blog, is that and John Schubert talked about it on his blog today. I wrote about it a few days ago, that we live in an era where we are so much more safe than we used to be. Evan Sayre talks about the Kindergarten of Eden and how people, because they're so safe, they live in such a safe world that they're not used to dangers. And that's where we're reacting here. If people take it serious, treat it seriously, but don't panic, we're going to be fine. Yeah, there's going to be some people who die from this because it's the nature of this type of disease. The people who are most vulnerable, who have respiratory illnesses, who are very old. I mean, I'm getting this 60, so I'm probably on the edge of that. And my wife has some breathing issues, and she's a nurse, so she could conceivably be in danger. But if we're careful, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through it fine. And I think that it's much easier. It's much easier to talk people into washing their hands than to stop them from being stupid. Stupid is not something that you can't get. There's no vaccination for stupid. But there are people who benefit from panic, and the people who benefit from panic are trying to generate panic. So keep an eye on that. And also, thank your truck driver and thank your network managers, because a lot of people are going to be working from home and getting things delivered. And it'll be the truck drivers driving those rigs across the country, and the network managers keeping the internet up, and the warehouse workers processing those deliveries, and even your local driver delivery guys who are going to allow people to do this. Because of those guys, we're going to be able to function. We're very lucky that this happened now instead of 30 years ago, because we're going to be able to function as a society pretty good. I mean, I don't like the idea that there's no baseball, but we'll manage. All it requires is to do basic things right and not to be stupid. You can manage that, it'll be okay. Well, this has been a longer episode than normal because I've had a lot to say and I'm wide awake and I'm feeling pretty good. I want to thank you for joining us, for those of you who joined us live, and remind you guys who are listening to this podcast later, that you can catch us. We are on every Friday at 12:35 a.m. and Monday at 12:35 a.m. There may be occasions where on Friday we might actually start at midnight if I get out of work. 12:35 a.m. and Monday at 12:35 a.m. There may be occasions where on Friday we might actually start at midnight if I get out of work up and take a quick peek at the news of the day to see if there's anything else I want to comment on. Well, hope you liked what you saw. Hope you join us next time, and up arrow the video if you like it. We don't get it. This is not a big thing. We're starting small. We're going to see how this goes, because the goal was to draw in about $180 more a month. We've already made that goal for March. Hopefully we'll do that again in April. That's our goal, and we're sticking to it. And if you like what you see, again, up arrow the thing, or hit the tip jar at DaTechGuyBlog.com. Again, you find me DaTechGuyBlog.com, DaTechGuyBlog.com. You find me at WQPH Radio 89.3 FM on the dial. The show is Your Prayer Intentions, Saturdays at noon. You can find the podcast of that show at WQPHradio.org. Find me on Twitter at the Tech Guy Blog. Find me here on YouTube at the Tech Guy Blog. Find my book at Amazon, Hail Mary, the Perfect Protestant Catholic Prayer. Until the next time, this is Pete the Tech Guy, declaring that the Tech Guy's Midnight Court is now adjourned. Take care, all.